right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So as a physics teacher, there's always two questions that I get asked. One, why aren't you wearing shoes? And number two, what's the deal with the climate? Well, first of all, I hate wearing shoes. I don't like my feet all closed up. I like to be well grounded. Second issue, with the climate, there's a few issues here. People always seem to think that, or we're told, that the temperature is rising all over the place, everything is out of control, there's going to be all this catastrophic stuff happening, but that's not really the case. It's not that I don't believe the climate is changing, it's what's really going on. So that's what we want to look at today. There's 4 questions we're going to look at about the changing climate. The first one we want to look at is whether or not any of this is unprecedented. We're always told that the climate is changing unprecedentedly. It's getting faster, it's heating up faster than it was ever done before. So that's the first thing we want to look at here. Is that really the case? Well, here's a graph, and if I can get out here to point on it. So here's a graph of temperature from, not that I can see on that number there, 1850. So this is all of our recorded temperatures from 1850 on to about now. And we can see that, yeah, sure enough, the temperature is going up, that we do. But the question is whether this stuff here that everybody was complaining about, whether that's at the same rate as this stuff over here. So let me help you out with that. Let me put 2 lines on there. Those 2 lines represent the trend, the slope of those particular areas. Now, those 2 lines are identical. So the rate at which we're warming right now, or were, and back here in the 1930s, it's the same rate. Now, back in the 1930s, this was before the Industrial Revolution, and the temperature is rising at the same rate that it was recently. So you can't say that it never happened if it did happen. So that's the first issue there. All right. Now, if we just look, this is another really interesting thing, if we just look at the last 17 years, that doesn't look like much of a trend at all. For the last 17 years, our temperature really hasn't been doing anything. It certainly hasn't been going up at any kind of wonderful rate, and it's certainly not going down either. But it's not doing anything. So for the last 17 years, we haven't had any kind of temperature rise. So again, that goes with our, how can we say that it's rising at an unprecedented rate if it isn't even rising? The next issue comes with whether it's been this warm before or not. We always hear, oh yes, this was the warmest, or this was the 10th warmest summer, or the 10th warmest winter, or whatever. What they're leaving out is since we started recording temperatures. We only started recording temperatures back in the 1860s. Before that, nobody thought to keep track of what the temperature was. Why would you care? So before that, nobody kept track of anything. So sure, from the 1860s it may have been the warmest, but the Earth has been around a little bit before the 1860s. So we really can't just use that as our baseline. So here is a reconstruction of temperature going back 4,400 years. Now we can see this right way at the end here. This is now. Okay, so there's about where the temperature is now. Now we can see and highlighted there, and well, it's appearing as yellow on that screen there, there are at least 3 other times in recent history where not only has it been as warm as now, it's been warmer. The one time there, this period here, is known as the medieval warm period. During that time, the Vikings lived in Greenland. Greenland was green. They grew crops. Now it's of course all covered in ice and you can't do that. But back then, it was green, crops, people lived there, people flourished there. So it was certainly a helpful time. And then if we go back beyond that, there was the period we call the Roman warming period, and it was even warmer yet. So what we have nowadays certainly isn't the warmest period ever, as you've been led to believe. It may be warmer than, the 1800s, but not if we go back farther. So the next big question then becomes this whole idea of carbon dioxide. Does carbon dioxide really have anything to do with what the temperature is doing? Well, for that we have to stop and ask what carbon dioxide is and how on earth could it even possibly do it. Okay, well, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases absorb energy. So pretend this is energy from the sun. So it comes down, the carbon dioxide molecule, or any greenhouse gas molecule, grabs that energy and gets excited. It gets excited, it has that extra energy in it. Okay? But if it grabs energy, at some point, watch out front row, at some point it has to release that energy. Okay? Now, when it releases that energy, it can't add extra to the atmosphere because it took it out of there. And conservation of energy tells us that we can't make up energy, we can't make new energy. So what energy was ever there to begin with, carbon dioxide absorbed it, or whatever other greenhouse gas, and then re-released it. So it can't make it warmer. All it can do is maintain the temperature that it was. That's a little bit of a misconception with this idea of a greenhouse gas. We think of greenhouses as those big glass buildings with these roofs on them. So when the building heats up inside, the heat is trapped. Our atmosphere doesn't trap anything. The heat is fully free to go up, out, whether or not these greenhouse gases are absorbing it or releasing it or whatever they're doing. The heat will eventually leave. So that implies then that what our atmosphere does is simply slows down the escape of heat. It doesn't actually trap it. Okay? So having said that, carbon dioxide makes up about 0.04% of our atmosphere. Teensy-weensy amount. So yes, it can slow down the heat a little bit, but where the real issue comes, and what the theory says is that teensy-weensy little bit of heat that it's going to add, it's going to cause more water to evaporate. Water is a better greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. So then that water will start doing the same thing, which will heat up a little bit, which will then have more water. So the theory goes that that little bit of carbon dioxide will cause more water, which will cause more water, which will cause more water, which will cause more water, and we'll have this enhanced effect that'll spiral out of control. So let's see if that's actually what's going on. So here's the amount of carbon dioxide over the last few years, so it's definitely been going up. Okay. Let's put the temperature on top of that. Okay. The temperature hasn't been doing anything, yet the carbon dioxide's been going up. So carbon dioxide really doesn't seem to have anything to do with what the temperature is doing whatsoever. Otherwise, we would see some sort of spiraling out of control. Now, granted, that's 17 years. For something that's been around for 4.5 billion years, 17 years really is nothing. Right? Let's go back to the other graph that I showed you for 4,400 years. The carbon dioxide is across the bottom. Again, we can see there's no real relationship there whatsoever to what temperature is doing. As a matter of fact, towards the end, temperature seems to be going down while carbon dioxide seems to be going up. But again, 4,400 years, nothing compared to 4.5 billion. So let's do this. There's a temperature reconstruction going back about 4 billion years. Okay? The purple line is the carbon dioxide, and the blue line is the temperature. as you can see, there's no relationship whatsoever between any of those two things. So therefore then, we really have nothing. So what is going on then? What's basing all this? Well, these guys put together these climate models based on these assumptions that we've been talking about. Those climate models do what we see here. So this is all of the spaghetti graph there is of all the climate models, and there's a straight line drawn through that's showing the average. So the models, the computer models, they show that everything should be warming. The problem is that nothing actually is. The dots across the bottom are what the temperature's actually been doing. So all of the scare is based on some computer models that have been based on probably inaccurate information, because we really don't know much about the climate. We really don't know what clouds do, or how they're formed, or what their relationship is to the excess carbon dioxide or excess water, or how the sun's irradiance affects clouds. There's a whole bunch of things that we really don't know how they all work together. And so everything is being based on these models. So that leaves us with one really big question. What is all of it really about? If our temperature isn't skyrocketing, if there really isn't an issue with, high temperatures causing problems and everything else, then what is going on? What are these people really trying to do? So here's a quote from a high-level UN IPCC official. We distribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. Basically, it's a big mistake to discuss climate policy separate from the major themes of globalization. And finally, at the end, this has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore. It's not about the environment. It's not about saving the earth. It's not about doing anything good for the planet. It's all about taking money away from rich nations and giving it to poor nations. And it's not even really the poor nations that are getting it. It would be the evil dictators that are in charge of those poor nations that are getting it. Just to emphasize the matter, Greenpeace, a big environmental organization, they don't think it matters what's true, only whether or not people believe something is true. So if they can convince you that global warming is true, and if they can convince you that this is a big, huge issue, then they've done their job. They really don't care what the truth really is. They just want to be able to control what it is that you are thinking. Here's one. Giving society cheap, abundant energy would be the equivalent of giving an idiot child a machine gun. Paul Enrich is an interesting character. He predicted that by now, the world's population would have mostly starved off due to lack of food, because we wouldn't be able to produce enough food to feed all of the people on the earth. He has a very negative view of humans and would kind of like them to be gone. So energy, the ability to produce electricity, is the ability to expand your economy. It's the ability to succeed. It's the ability to generate wealth. It's the ability to get out of poverty. It's what third world nations need in order to survive. But people like Paul here don't want them to have it. The UK Met Office. This is where all of the temperature data comes from. The data doesn't matter. We're not basing our recommendations on the data. We're basing it on the climate models. So again, it doesn't matter what the truth is. All that matters is what our models show. And here's from the founder of the Sierra Club. There's an interesting quote. Childbearing should be a punishable crime against humanity. Again, a people hate. These are the people, these are the environmental organizations that are promoting this global warming, the catastrophic global warming. That's what they want. Let's finish with this quote here from Freeman Dyson. The idea that global warming is the most important problem facing the world is total nonsense and is doing a lot of harm. We've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars on a problem that really doesn't exist. Think about the benefits that that money could have done for pretty much anything.